Okay.
Sorry.
How are you? Welcome back. How you been? Good. Come on over. Thank you.
Pick up everything.
Watched your meeting Monday night. It looked like a fun one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I just can't believe it. I wasn't educated well enough on the drink. There's an authority. Really like.
No, it's all right. So, one less who are interested. I mean, as far as, yeah.
Yes, said he was coming, so.
Other than that, it was fine. Mayor was hot, everybody was hot.
Oh, my God.
Oh, sorry, nice to meet you. Yeah, sorry about your nameplate.
Oh, that's
It was in the sign shop to do it all.
Good artwork though.
Good artwork.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Stressed
I don't know
about
if I
this,
met these guys.
we're having with.
Go ahead, Laura.
So I'm not sure. We met, I'm Randy.
Jeff Portco, how do you
Yeah,
know?
glad to meet you. This one of your first meetings or? No, 24. Fourth meeting, okay, then I must have been on vacation. All right, nice to meet you.
No
I
way.
met you at Planning Commission. Yeah, all right, welcome aboard, man. Yeah, thanks.
Jeff Portco.
Jeff Science,
Chair, we just.
It's a lot of rock that you go out there.
You're ready?
Okay, public service is what I gotta have.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Right on time. Okay. I am calling to order the March 22nd, 2024 meeting of the City of Walker Zoning Board of Appeals at 6:30 p.m. By way of introduction, I will briefly explain the purpose of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The City of Walker has adopted a zoning ordinance. If the property owner wishes relief from the portion of the ordinance, the state of Michigan Zoning Enabling Act provides for an avenue of appeal, hence the name Zoning Board of Appeals. The zoning board must find that 4 conditions exist in reviewing an application in order to grant a variance. If all 4 of these conditions are met, the board can grant an approval for a variance from the ordinance. The 4 conditions that must be met are: 1, extraordinary or exceptional circumstances which apply to this parcel and do not apply generally to other properties in this district. 2, preservation and enjoyment of property rights that other properties in this district or vicinity possesses. Number 3, the variance must not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties. And 4, the request is not of such a general nature that the ordinance should be changed. Unlike the decision by the Planning Commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the City Commission, a decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals is not reviewed and cannot be overturned by the City Commission. The Zoning Enabling Act states that the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be final. A party aggrieved by the decision may appeal to the Circuit Court of the county in which the property is located. An appeal to the Circuit Court must be filed within 30 days of that decision. Okay, first we have minutes from the 24th, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, January 24th. And there were 24 of us there at the time, so, motion to approve minutes.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion by Randy, supported by Tom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, those are passed. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment, not related to this case, but just in general. You have 3 to 5 minutes to, if you just want to discuss something that's on your mind. So, if there's anyone out there.
Nope, I'm good right now.
Okay. Okay.
Not related to the case, is that what that means?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have one one item of business on the agenda. It's case 24-001 for 2441 Hillside Drive Northwest. This is a dimensional variance request seeking relief from section 7.01 schedule regulations for front, secondary front, and rear yard setbacks. The way we'll go about it is first, Paula will go over her findings and thoughts and conclusions on what's going on, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to speak after that. Then we will have a public hearing for others that want to talk about that case. So they'll have the opportunity to do that after that, and then the applicant can respond to that after that. So then the board will close the public hearing and we'll discuss the facts and make a decision based on that. So with that all being said, Paula?
Thank you, Brian. Hopefully I'm able to be heard. We're having some technical difficulties. IT is on their way to help us get the podium mics working again. In the interim, we have 2 handheld mics that will be passed around and brought up to the podium for the applicant to speak as well. So in lieu of a staff report, like I normally show, I have a presentation that overviews the case because there are some technicalities I want to make sure the board and those in the room understand as we move forward. So first, and I'll get into a map soon, so in this case is for 2441 Hillside Drive. It's currently zoned A, single-family residential. The lot is 0.15 acres, and they're requesting a dimensional variance, as stated by the chair, to front, secondary front, and rear yard setbacks. So to orient everyone to the property in question, it's just off Alpine Avenue on Hillside Drive, the corner of Hillside and Hubbard. This is an excerpt from the zoning map, so you can see the property in question outlined in blue here. It is this, and the properties to the north and east are also zoned A, single-family residential. Across Hillside Drive to the south, there is I-1 light industrial zoning, and to the west across Hubbard Avenue, the immediate properties are zoned C1 local commercial and are also within the Alpine overlay district. The concerns here are regarding section 7.01, the schedule of regulations table in the zoning ordinance. This is a screen capture of that ordinance. So we're looking here, the table has the different categories that need to be met, and then the rows are different zoning districts. So I cropped it here, focusing on the A district, which is the one the property is located in. When we review the application, we find that all the boxes marked in green are those in which the proposal that I will get into meet the ordinance and there are no concerns. Those marked in red are the ones where the application does not fall in line with the ordinance. So those will be the areas we're focusing our attention. First, I'm going to zone in on this minimum lot size question because the ordinance addresses this within the nonconformities chapter, Article 17. Section 17.09 for lots identifies here that when there's a parcel of land in a residential district that was in existence when the ordinance was first created, and it doesn't meet the new standards as to area and width, which are 2 of the boxes in red from the earlier table, but it has at least half of each of those. It can be used for single-family uses, and the side yards may be reduced to help it, the setbacks, give some flexibility to platted small lots. The lot that we're looking at here was platted and established in 1941. This is a copy of the Newell House plat. So it was in existence before the city of Walker was incorporated, let alone when the zoning ordinance was first enacted in 1971. So the first criteria is met. The second, the lot has 55% of the required area and 55% of the required width. So this section does apply, and now we see that those 2 boxes really are no longer red, they're green. When you look through the ordinance and apply the established reductions within the ordinance for small lots. So now we have these 2 areas, the front yard and the rear yard, which are questions or concerns. That's the reason the applicant is here for a variance. So I apologize, this got a little blurry when it got zoomed in and then blown up again. Here is a graphic from the zoning ordinance to help everyone understand what we're talking about when we talk about setbacks as to the ordinance. So for an interior lot, this is a lot that has other lots on both sides. There's a front yard, which here is marked in this brighter green, along the property line that faces the street of the address. And then there are side setbacks from each of the side property lines, as well as a rear setback from the back of the property. Lots that have frontage on two different streets, we call them corner lots, they have a front yard setback as well as a secondary front yard setback. Those are the same numbers from the table. So in this case, both would need to be 35 feet in the A district. The side yard is 10 feet and the rear yard is 25 feet. So this is helping to orient everyone into the questions that we'll get into momentarily. However, this also has a footnote. That's at 11 there on the table. And that footnote says that if more than one half of the dwellings on 500 feet either side of the proposed residential building have a uniform front yard setback, either greater or lesser than required by the district, the new home can be built at that same setback line so that the homes continue to be uniform to continue the character of the neighborhood as already established. In this case, that is what I just said. Getting ahead of myself here. So footnote 11 in my review applies to both front yards because this is a corner lot. It has a front yard and a secondary front yard. For the purpose of this lot, the front yard is on Hillside and the secondary front yard is on Hubbard. For Hillside, the properties that have been deemed to be in a uniform front line, they're all within the 500 feet on that kind of staggered line along the angled Hillside Street. The ones that are uniform are the 4 immediately adjacent homes. The average of those front yard setbacks is 31 feet, not 35. So according to footnote 11, the front yard setback for this property, 2441 Hillside, is 31 feet, not 35 feet. For Hubbard, the average front yard setback for those in a uniform line is 19 feet. However, footnote 11 permits a reduction to 75 feet or an extension to 100 or 75% or 125%. So it can't be reduced all the way to 19. It can only be reduced down to 26.5 feet, which is at 75% of 35. There's an error in my staff report to that. I apologize. I'm trying to make sure this is very clear here for the board members and those in the public in attendance. So these are the main questions as we dig into the setbacks on the property. Hopefully, this is starting to make sense. I'm going to pause because I have more to go through, but I want to ask the board if there are any questions I can answer at this time about what I just went over. Okay, moving on. Now we get into the house as proposed by the applicant. So orienting you here on the right side of the screen is Hillside. That would be the front yard. On the south, or on the bottom of the screen, which is to the west, is Hubbard. And then the property line is drawn. You can say it says surveyed property line. And then the house is oriented there. This will come back. I have overlaid this on the property itself to help increase understanding. So there is a proposed 968 square foot house with a partially finished basement. There's some of its living space, some of it is mechanical and storage space, as well as an attached garage and a proposed patio to the east. And then I also put in here, as provided by the applicant, the interior layout as proposed for the house, both the upper and lower levels, and the elevation sketch as provided. So the narrow edge of the house that is facing Hillside and the long edge of the house is facing Hubbard. So here we are. This is the house overlaid on the subject lot to give the board an idea of where the house would sit on the property. the setbacks as drawn to scale on the aerial image. And so you can see here, this front yard here is where it would be required to be 31 feet with the footnotes and the reductions provided in the ordinance. The secondary front yard facing Hufford would, by the ordinance, is 26.5 feet. So you can see here the proposed front yard setback is 15 feet. And the rear yard here, according to the ordinance, which cannot be reduced by any of the reductions provided in the ordinance, is supposed to be 25 feet. The proposal here is for 15 feet. So that's where we come to the variances being requested. A front yard variance of 4 feet, allowing the house to be only 27 feet from the front property line when the ordinance requires 31. A secondary front yard variance of 11.5 feet, allowing the house to be only 15 feet from the property line when the ordinance requires 26.5. And a rear yard variance of 10 feet, allowing the house to be only 15 feet from the property line when the ordinance requires 25. So these are the questions before the board tonight. Whether or not to grant these variances to the applicant. The standards in the ordinance for granting a variance, as overviewed by the chair at the beginning of the meeting, are outlined. The ordinance states that the board must find that all 4 of the standards are met in order to grant a variance. I encourage the board, as we get further and hear from the applicant in the public hearing, to review during fact-finding these standards one by one, whether or not they've been met. The standards again are that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances applying to the property in question as the intended use that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zoning district, that's the A district. B, that such a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right similar to that possessed by other properties in the same district and in this vicinity, so that's both the A district across the city and especially the neighborhood in which the property is located. The possibility of increased financial return shall not of itself be deemed sufficient to warrant a variance. C, the authorizing such a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties and will not materially impair the intent and purposes of this chapter or the public interest. And D, that the condition or situation of the piece of property or the intended use for which the variance is sought is not of so general or recurrent in nature that it needs to be, the ordinance should be updated rather than a variance given. So that is the general overview, but I wanted to provide a little more additional information to help the board have a complete understanding of the property in question. So first, the zoning areas across the city is a comparison. So this district is, the property is located in the A district, and so other areas marked for A district are shown in the circles on the map, and looking at them can give some context as to the decision regarding the variance request. So first here, I'm highlighting them in red as we review them. So this is immediately to the north of the neighborhood where the property is located, of a similar age to the parcel in question, and you'll see the lots there. This whole neighborhood is zoned A. South along Alpine, but to the west this time, this is the Coswell and Harding neighborhood area. Similarly, an older neighborhood within Walker that predates the city of Walker. Now we're moving to the other side of Walker here, just north of Lake Michigan Drive. This is the Chesterfield Heights neighborhood. I just took these screenshots. I have access and pulled up where these come from, so we can go back into them in more detail and kind of zoom in and do some basic measurements if that would be beneficial to the board later as they get into fact finding. Now, more centrally located here to the east of Kinney, this is the Mission and Stark area. You can see this is a slightly newer neighborhood than the previous ones we were looking at. And you can see the houses tend to be wider and with those uniform 35-foot setbacks. As opposed to some of the other neighborhoods that I showed, this one does not have many non-conforming properties, and most of the, in this neighborhood, align with all of the regulations in the A district. So, and then here is the Orchard Ridge neighborhood, a much more current, more recently built neighborhood, also Zone A. Finally, to help the board understand the setbacks in question, I drew them onto the subject lot. I am not a drafter, so bear with me. So first, just to give context, this is a corner lot, so these setbacks would never apply to this lot, but these are the standard A setbacks. So these are the setback requirements if a new home were to be built to the property immediately to the east, or another one to the east that has residential properties on both sides. The building envelope, that is the area within all of the setbacks requirements where a house could be built, is approximately 30 feet by 65 feet. And were this an interior lot, you could orient a house that would fit within that and not require a variance. This is a corner lot, so if we applied the standards without any of the reductions that we talked about, you could not build a house because with a secondary front yard, your building envelope is 5 feet wide. There is not room to build a house within that area. So finally, here we're looking at the A district setbacks for corner lots with the adjustments from 701 footnote 11 and 1709 applied. The building envelope here is 16.5 feet by 68 feet, and it would not fit a small modern house. And that leads the applicant here to the board today. So these are the standards or the setback requirements before any variances would be granted. So the variances, I'll zoom back to that, where they're asking for 4-foot variance in the front yard, 11.5 in the secondary front yard, and 10 in the rear yard, would be to push that yellow south, west, and east to make room for a house to be built. So that is my overview. And again, I'm happy to go back to any of these sections for the board as we get in there. I'm just going to pull, this is again the variances that are being requested and the house as proposed on the subject lot. So that is what I have for the board in terms of background information and relevant information as to the lot. I have my staff report pulled up as well as the applicant's materials, Google Maps, and Earth, so we can zoom around a bit if necessary. And finally, this is where I pulled some of those screenshots with the zoning map, so we can zoom around and look at those other A neighborhoods if it would be beneficial to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have on that length of material that I just covered for you.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Mr. Armstrong.
That'd be I.
Actually,
I have a pretty good voice, so whether it carries or not for you.
I appreciate that. Unfortunately, for the recording, we
Gotcha.
need to have you on the
Yep.
microphone because
Could I ask real quick if any of the houses in that particular neighborhood alongside this one?
Don't need to get super close to this one, it has a long distance.
Okay. Do I have to press a button here or no? It works. Just walks, doesn't work? Okay. So much for the IT.
I would like to ask before we begin, if it's on, if any of the homes in this particular neighborhood are compliant with the current zoning restrictions on frontage and side yards and backyards, or are they not? Are they grandfathered in because they were built before the ordinance took effect, or not?
Did you hear that?
I apologize. I was not able to hear. I'm
Oh.
consulting with IT. Could you please repeat the question?
Are any of the homes surrounding this property in that vicinity of the same neighborhood compliant with the current ordinance, or are they grandfathered in because they were already constructed before this ordinance took effect?
Is it not working?
No, it is, but I,
Right there.
these are ours. Thank you for the question. I'm going to turn off the zoning layer here. So hopefully it's a little more clear. So this is the subject lot. I don't know if I can turn off the labels. My apologies for that. Looking here, most of the houses immediately around these setbacks, 1 or 2 are that 35 feet, most are closer. Along Hufford, these are all closer to the street and have side setbacks that are much less than what the A district currently requires. So in my estimation, probably 95% of the homes in the immediate neighborhood are non-conforming or legally non-conforming is what you might say. They were built to the standards of the day. They do not meet the current ordinance regulations.
Right, okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just waiting for questions.
No.
She had a wealth of information there, and I thought she did very well with the presentation. I guess the one thing that I was looking at when I actually have a purchase agreement for this piece of property that belonged to the church that was on the corner there. And my purchase agreement is contingent upon whether or not we receive a zoning variance for that property. Because obviously, as Paula had emphasized there, you won't be able to build on it to the current standards. It's just too small of a lot the way that was designed. When trying to design for a single-family residential house for that particular corner lot, I have tried to take in all the considerations of the neighborhood. To the south on Hillside, the way that I have the house, I did have the property actually surveyed. So it has been professionally surveyed by Yonker Survey with the corner stakes being marked. And then on the south side of that, the way that I had that setback set up, or the house projected to set there, would be, if you looked down Hillside, each one of those houses is slightly staggered because that street runs at an angle. So the intent was to have that house set just slightly forward than the one to the east of it, so that it would still have that same staggered appearance when you look that way. Off of Hufford on the west side, the way that front of the house would be projecting is it is, if you look down Hufford, it does appear that it is pretty much in line with all the other houses there. So when I was trying to do the setback setup for that layout, I was taking those things into consideration. The only thing that this house would be a little bit different than the ones in the surrounding, vicinity was many of those are either 1.5-story or 2-story homes. This was just a single level, so that would be probably, and many of those have detached garages, whereas with the way that their lots were designed, whereas this one would be attached on the end for storage purposes and obviously for parking a vehicle.
Anything else?
No, I tried to provide as much information as I could right up front to.
Well, we'll see what's the board.
I know.
Any questions from the board?
How do you enter the garage?
It would be off of Hufford.
Hufford?
Yes.
Thank you.
And as I was noted, I think it was on one of the diagrams, on my original diagram, I didn't realize it, but it was brought to my attention that Hufford does not have sidewalks. There is a sidewalk that runs east and west along Hillside, and it was requested that if this corner lot is developed, that the sidewalk would be required going from Hillside north to the north edge property line, which I'm completely okay with. There's no other sidewalks there, but there is that intent into the future, the potential for adding sidewalks, so that one would be as a part of that project. It would have a cement driveway coming from the garage all the way out to the road. As far as water runoff, I know that lot is a little bit higher in the northeast corner, but that would be the starting point, and it does flow down towards the southwest. And elevation drop is maybe 1.5 feet or so from the high point down to the low point, which is the corner.
Okay, Randy.
Just a couple questions. You purchased this on a personal, you're gonna build it, you're gonna live there, or is it a spec house, or?
It would actually, the initial intent is for my son. Our son has an apartment. He's been out on his own now for about 3 or 4 years. He's starting to get into that mode where he would like to try and find something. I'm in the trade business and been looking for a good lot somewhere, and this one came available, and I thought it would be a good starter home for him.
So at this point, you're keeping it in the family?
That is the intent right now, if he would like it. Then he's got first option. Now, if he doesn't, then at that point, then I would look to offer it to somebody else as a very reasonably priced starter home.
Okay, the second follow-up question, on the elevation, it kind of is drawn like it's a walkout on the south side, is that?
No, those are egress windows.
Okay.
Because we've got the two basement bedroom, or in the basement, I've got to have egresses, so I put them on the south end of that. So that's what, when you look at it, that's what you see, is it's the egress.
Grade and the.
Yeah, the grade, because I think the grade indicated that it had to be within 18 inches, if I'm not, I think it was a foot to 18 inches, and it would be, the grade level would be fairly level all the way, it was slightly sloped towards the south, but those window wells would go in there with grate coverings on them.
And then one other comment on a question. I do think it's a benefit for the driveway coming off. What is it, what's the other street on?
Hubbard.
And as far as away you can get from the intersection, it's kind of a benefit for that.
Yes, and it is designed that way, so it is to the farthest north that we can possibly go off that corner.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, is that a double garage or two stall garage?
I do have it intended to have a 16-foot wide door, so it would be a two-stall garage, with the intent on at least having space for one car and then storage, because those lots are so small. Where do you put, I don't want anything to be able to get stored outside. I would just assume, like, if you have a lawnmower or, grills or stuff like that, you can put it in a garage or store it somewhere, and you're not gonna have any place else to put like a storage building on site, so I was trying to enlarge that as much as possible, so it is potential for a two-stall, yes, with a 16-foot wide garage door.
And staying with the sector, the classification of A for residential and also for the characteristics of that neighborhood, is there a known percentage of two-stall garages versus detached and attached versus not at all?
I did not get into that level of detail, I apologize. We can look at the neighborhood a bit.
I can talk about that when I'm talking.
I don't have an answer prepared for that.
Okay. That's one of my questions was just asked, so I can address that in just a minute. But my first question is, on the application you had, and you have a lot of great points. You tried to keep it in compliance with the area. You worked the setbacks. So a lot of it is very understandable. The way the properties changed zoning with the years, nothing you can do about that. Our ordinances allow for that, right, with the 50% reduction thingy, and we worked all that out. We need to make the variance even against that reduction. We're allowing, right? So we're kind of making two cuts on this if we approve this, right? There's the one that our ordinance allows, and then we have to allow for variance against the extra changes. You didn't answer question E, which is with respect to the use variance, that the property for which a variance is sought cannot reasonably be used in a manner consistent with the existing zoning. You left that blank.
If I may interject, the use variance, that final question only applies when someone is applying for a use variance,
Okay.
which is when someone wants to use the property in a way that's not allowed within the ordinance. So in this case, as a dimensional variance request, I told him not to answer that question, as it's not one of the standards that needs to be met for this variance to be granted.
Okay, so then my next question, Paul, probably is for you. I was just looking, trying to learn about this today and looking through the Michigan Municipal League and the other stuff. And what the courts look at, one of the things they look at is this problem that a variance is being requested for self-created. And that's not one of the standards you have here. In other words, could have been avoided is the applicant by what they're doing, creating a problem that's being asked for remedy. How come we're not addressing that question?
I have seen that in other zoning ordinances. It's not one of the standards in our local zoning ordinance. So the standards there are the standards that have been in our City of Walker zoning ordinance. In at least the last 3 editions, I didn't search beyond that. So those are the standards that were requested. And to speak to that a little bit, with those reductions that I went through, one of them reduces when the width is smaller, but it's at least 50%, the side yard setbacks can be reduced to 7 feet in proportion, and in this case, the 7 feet would be allowed. which if, let me pull up in here. So currently, the side yard setback there is 10 feet. Theoretically, the building could be pushed to the east 3 feet, which would reduce the amount of variance required along the secondary front yard along Hufford. And that is the only one that I was aware of, or if you didn't have a garage, you wouldn't need the rear yard variance. Garages in Michigan are fairly common, modern convenience that people like to see in a home. So in that regard, there could be an argument made that that would be created by the applicant, but those are pretty, so that's not one of the standards in our ordinance that we have required.
Okay, that's fair. And as the applicant mentions, the house next door is 5 feet from the property line, so there's obviously not a lot of work to work with. But I'm interested in the garage question too. And I live right near there, so I moved the area today. Of the houses in that, and there aren't very many, right? There's like 11, and I guess there are 10, because one of them's vacant. That's plot number 3. All of them are single car garages or carports or nothing. So to me, that is something we need to think about, because we're potentially kind of changing what everybody else in the neighborhood kind of has with this new thing. On the other hand, people do store a bunch of stuff in their yard and raise them. I acknowledge there's a trade-off there.
Yeah.
But we are, trying to keep it in keeping with, and that would not be in keeping with if we went for a much bigger garage in the current plat. So that's what I observed today. Thanks.
Paul, when you look at this line that goes diagonal, where do you measure from when you figure this out? Is it an average of how far out it is, or back in that corner where it's?
I believe you take it from a straight line across the shortest distance. So in this case, you measure the front setback from down to this line.
Okay. Okay. Anything else for the applicant?
Could I ask, has this lot been vacant
Yes,
all the time? No other building has stood
not to
there?
my knowledge. This was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the last lot that was left vacant in that original plot.
Is it split off from a different lot?
Not that I'm aware of. It was known as Lot 2 I believe it was Lot 2 on the original plot, or Lot 3. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the church on the corner had owned it, or currently owns it at this point.
Okay. Anything else for the applicant?
Just one more thing. How do we deal with, I guess we don't count the porch, the back porch, because that's right up against the property line behind.
Yes, the porch does not count toward the building setback. As drawn, the porch is 10 feet deep and the house is 13 feet from the property line. The requirement for a permanent structure is 5 feet, so that would be addressed through the building permit process. Like this, if the variance is granted, the applicant would need to get a zoning permit or definitely building permits, and that would be addressed at that time. That the porch wouldn't be able to be in quite those dimensions, because it needs to be no closer than 5 feet from the property line.
Okay, I think what I just heard is they can't do that. With the current, what's shown in the drawing there.
So the deck on the back of the house, on the east side of the house?
Yes, it would need to be shortened. If it was 2 feet narrower, it would be allowed. But that would get addressed through the standard administrative process.
Right, so what I'm saying, what I'm hearing, is you won't be able to get a permit for that, for the current porch you have.
Not for that exact site plan. I'd have to make a note.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. Make a note that the back deck cannot be closer than 5 feet, because that's going to be attached to the house.
Correct.
But if that was just a standard patio, where the steps were right next to the house and it went down to a patio into the backyard, then that doesn't It's just to be stone patio then at that point.
I believe so. My colleague Megan Morgan, the zoning
Okay.
administrator, is the one that you would direct those specific
Okay.
questions to.
Anything else? Okay, can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
Sure, I'll make a motion to open the public.
Motion by Randy,
Support.
support by Dan. All in favor, open the public hearing?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing's open. Okay, so anyone in the audience that wants to address this, what's your name? If you could state your name and address, please.
Yep, I'm Heather Amor. I live at 2447 Hillside, which is directly next to where they want to build. And my concerns are obvious, probably, that since you have to be set back away from the road on 2 different roads, it like butts up to my house, really like congesting the area, not really going with the flow. Like I had, like their backyard was gonna be my property. Cause there is no backyard, right? Is that, I have a question. That's a question.
Well, yeah, you're the one with the fence, the chain
Yeah.
fence that goes through there, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also the way their house is gonna be set forward is it just gonna cover my porch. Like my front porch, since they want their house closer. So it's not gonna go with the flow. And like everybody, like the house behind me right now and the house to the, it would be the east of me, the 2 houses next to me are both over 20 feet away, like well over 20 feet. Because the house to the east of me, see there's my garage, and then that's their garage and then their house. The one behind me is my whole backyard, and then and then there's a fence, and then his driveway, a small yard, and then his house. So putting that house right there is just literally just gonna like pretty much be like right next to my house. So I'm just concerned about privacy, like my front porch, backyard. And then I just had some questions, but you guys kind of asked those questions about if you're buying it to rent it or building it to sell it, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And, yeah, I think that is about it.
Or do you own your house?
What?
Do you own your house?
Yes, I lived there for 14 years.
Paula, did I hear somewhere that the fence was like 5 foot from her house or something? Was that?
Yeah.
Or did they?
It is, I measured it today.
Did you measure?
Yes.
I was-
According to the survey, the house is 4 feet 9 inches from the property line. The Heather's house is 4 feet 5 inches from what would be the joint property line.
Okay.
And as far as you know, that fence, was there a survey done? It probably was there before you.
I bought the house with the fence there.
Okay.
I literally measured it today and it measured 5 foot. And also on your presentation, it said that it was like, you said it was like 0.15 acre or something like that. And on the sign it says 0.14. But like I said, the way that it has to be set back on both sides from each street, it just kind of like puts it up on my house. Instead of like, because there's not enough room to put a house there, really, I don't think. I was kind of like inquiring about buying the property, just to, like add a bigger yard. But they said, and then I asked if a house could be built, they're like, no, so I was like, all right, I'll just kind of wait it out and wait till you lower it. So I was kind of shocked.
Okay. Anything else you look at?
I think that's it.
Sure.
How'd you find out about this hearing? Did you get a notice from Maryland?
I did.
Okay. Mr. Armstrong, would you like to respond or address anything she said, or?
I agree with her about how tight it is on the backside and the potential privacy issues there.
And the way that I was thinking of that and trying to lay that out is obviously that house will have a large front yard and south yard. And then where the back of the house would be, it obviously is, when I had the survey done, they said that the property line is, your fence is 4 inches on your side of the property. Where the property line is at, and then the fence, there's 4 inches of difference there, just to kind of keep that in. And then my thought there is to have a patio door there and then a patio out the back with like a 6 to 8 foot privacy fence.
Yeah, I definitely
On that
would want a
patio.
privacy fence if
That is intended, because not only for just you folks, but for whoever has this house. So that way when they go out to, have a, grill out or just some entertainment in the backyard, they don't have to worry about people looking in on them, and they don't have to worry about their sound carrying over into the neighbors also. But that is, I don't know if.
We talked about trees, like putting
Yeah, and
cedar
then that
trees
was
up,
the other
like
thing, I don't know if
natural
you've seen that or not.
borders.
But if you don't mind, I'll show her one here real quick here that I had initially proposed. Just try to help with those thoughts, because I agree. I mean, obviously, you didn't, your house was already built when you got there, and it's tight to that property line. This here was the original survey that we had done.
And I know it shows 4.9 on there, but he did indicate that was, and then on this here was the plan that I had proposed with a patio here, privacy fence with some shrubbery around it, and then coming along the back of the garage and on both the north as well as the east side, planting some of the taller, I don't know what the exact name of the shrubs are, but they'll grow to about 6 feet, 7 feet tall.
Right.
To help
Yeah, there you go.
to help offer some privacy going in both directions.
Right. I'm also concerned like how far you have the house coming up, like blocking my front porch.
As I had mentioned earlier, the one thing that I took into consideration when I was looking at that was obviously trying to fit the home size on there. And if you look down Hillside, each one of those houses stagger slightly back about 10 feet. When I did the measurements, because Hillside runs on that angle, everyone steps back. As you go east, each house steps back about 10 to 12 feet. So like your house is actually in front of your neighbors to the east. And so that was what my intent was when I was trying to design that, to keep the flow of the neighborhood going.
Bigger though, that house next to
That
me
would
is
kick
little,
over.
and then I don't want another little house as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, if you look at it right from here, it would be very, like, there is space to go to the next house, but yours is gonna be like right next to mine. That's,
Unfortunately, yeah,
I
that's
know,
the way
but
that
I'm
that
just
corner
saying,
lot
like,
lays out,
that's
yeah,
why I kind
unfortunately.
of like,
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for him?
I'm more than willing to help and work.
no, it was
Take
just
all
like
those
if you're gonna
concerns
be
into
like
consideration.
renting or just trying to flip it and like just profit off the house, is that, like, you're not moving in there to like live there? Cause I know that nobody's gonna build a house there to have like their dream home.
When my initial thought again is our son he's been out of the house now for about 3 or 4 years.
Right.
He lives downtown and he's starting to get into that mode where he would like to get into a house on himself. And my initial thought is to find a reasonably priced lot in town, because he wants to stay in town close to the stuff, and build a nice starter home. Now, he would have first right to that. If he decides that, no, or something else comes up with his work that takes him elsewhere, then yes, it would go on the market for another family or, other residents at that point in time. As far as renting, no, I have no inclination to rent anything. I don't want to get involved with that.
Okay. Thank you, both of you.
Okay.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Sure. I'll second.
Okay. Oh, okay. By Jeff and second by Randy. In favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, hearing's closed. Okay, I guess now we get into some discussion here. Do we want to go through the fact findings one by one?
To that end, Chair, I've prepared printed off the copies of the sample motion from, that doesn't need to be followed exactly, but could, that has the standards as well as the applicant's response in that. For the board, if you want to use to read and take notes.
Okay. Okay, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, applicant states current lot dimensions do not meet the city water requirements. Current lot dimensions were established when the code as a rule was developed. The staff response that the standard is that exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zoning are typical. These are related to peculiarities of the lot, which are challenging with the shape and easements, and creates an exceptional situation there. But then you're looking at that this is a corner lot. Like Paul said, that if it wasn't a corner lot, you probably won't be having the issues that we're having. It's because we got that it is sitting on the corner rather than on a standard lot, I guess. Preservation of property rights. Variance is needed to construct a single-family residence on a vacant lot, according to the applicant. And staff, the standard ask if a substantial property right similar to that possessed by other properties in the same zoning district or in the vicinity needs to be preserved or cannot be enjoyed. And then note that no substantial property rights to other single-family residential lots enjoyed that this property should be entitled to as well. I think, didn't you tell me that if that garage was not attached, that we will be looking for variance as well? Is that?
I had a discussion with the zoning administrator about this case. I was wondering about that because when a garage is attached, it is considered a part of the principal structure and therefore must be within the setbacks. And so that's where that 25 feet required rear yard and the here, and there's 15 feet, 25 are required. If the garage were detached, it would need to be at least 10 feet from the house and at least 5 feet from the rear property line. So, depending on the size of the garage, where the eaves fall, etc., it is theoretically possible that a detached garage could be constructed in this area that would not require a rear yard variance.
Thank you, Paula. No substantial detriment. Applicant says lot development site plan has taken into consideration layout of neighborhood. Our intent is to maintain neighborhood consistency while making the best use of the available lot space. And the staff answered with, are there any other ways in which granted variance would be substantial detriment to the properties of interest? And it's really, I see it as not a detriment from everything I've heard. heard. I mean, it's kind of fits in that neighborhood, and being that, I personally didn't see it as a detriment, but I guess it's up for discussion. Obviously, it's not gonna be a recurrent change, it's a one-time thing, and she's gotta know that, it's the last house to be developed in that whole area there, so. So if you guys want to go over these things, and
I think make a motion to approve the request of the applicant based on all the circumstances we've heard, and even the conditions and circumstances which the objections have been noted. So we know the objecting party has a setback of about 5 feet from the property line. And this is compliant with, from what I can tell, I'm familiar with this neighborhood. It's compliant with all the rest of the residential construction in this particular neighborhood, with the exception of a 2-stall or 1.5-stall garage. And I'm unclear on that because you said 15 or 16 feet for a garage door. It sounds more like a 1.5-stall garage to me, which would also fit right in with the development of this neighborhood. It does not substantially change, in my opinion, any of the aspects of the neighborhood. In fact, it probably improves it. So I ask that the applicant's request be approved.
okay, I would think that with the concern that Heather has, we should include something in this to make sure that there's some kind of a buffer.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question with the applicant in regards to Ms. Heather's, I'm sorry, I forget your last name.
Umlar,
Umler?
yeah.
Is there a way based on, and this may take in Paul or some of the other variances or setback rules, what I can tell is the patio is determined to be off the east of the house, which may be considered a side and not necessarily a rear of the house, but since the front and the drive come off from Hubbard, has there been any consideration for privacy for the neighbor, Ms. Heather owner? Moving that patio to the Hillsdale side of the street, rather facing the Hillsdale versus facing the driveway and other porch, the front porch for Ms. Owner. Well, I did get it wrong with the street name, sorry, yeah.
It's okay, I'm just.
So which
I'm not
direction?
sure whether you meant a patio, a concrete patio, or you're building a deck. Can you clarify that?
Well, originally I was thinking like a deck, 10 by 10, just composite wood deck out the backs. There's the original intent on that main floor was to have a slider off that living room, dining room area, going into what would be considered the rear yard, because we can't do anything out on the front side of that house to the west due to setback requirements. And coming off of that in the corner would be the north, and then the east corner would be a privacy type fence on the corner of that patio to help provide privacy between the neighbors and obviously that particular patio. Now, the one thing that Paula had brought up, which I was not aware of at the time, was that a permanent structure has to be 5 feet away from the property line. So that would change my thinking on what to do there. And in that particular case, I would probably look to do just a regular stone patio on grade, and then with a step or two coming down off that patio, or off the patio door down into that basically patio area, which would be patio stones. I would still do a privacy fence there, along with shrubbery along both the east and the north edge.
Thank you for the response. Maybe to get a little bit more clarity, is it something where you could bring the patio to the south facing or considered front yard? Would that be a possibility? I don't know if that satisfies anything necessarily, but just as a question for privacy, has that been a consideration to move it to the south side? And Paula, would that be part of the other ordinances or other rules that apply to having a patio or deck facing or from the considered front without drive, because I would say the Hubbard becomes the front aesthetically.
It's unfortunately a little bit of a complicated question. Let me see if I can find the reference quickly in the ordinance. Some parts of a front entryway do not count toward where the setback is. Stoops of a certain size, steps, smaller patios, like front, like porch type patios. And I'll need to see if I can find the reference, but some of them do not count, and above a particular size or a particular type of structure do count toward the house. I don't know the reference off the top of my head, but I'll see if I can find it.
My concern from a homeowner, if I was the homeowner on that and my patio was out the south, Hillside can get to be a busy road. So how do you, and then I don't know how you would put privacy type up there to help reduce that noise traffic from that corner of that Hillside road.
I think both sides are gonna end up being busy though, because they're putting the car wash.
Hufford and Hillside, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the intent, and then coming off that one corner was another privacy fence even with the house to try to reduce some of that noise traffic and make a more quieter space.
Mr. Chairman, may I make some observations? So I don't take this wrong, but I've built probably 50 houses in Chesterfield Heights. I've probably been in front of this board over there about 30 or 40 times. So there are some situations that we should be done with this in about 5 minutes, in my opinion, based on what's requested here, based on the board conditions. If you want to look at one in Chesterfield Heights, there's one on the corner of West Green and Clinton. Very similar situation, identical to what this gentleman is proposing, and this lady to the neighbor to the south. With that being said, to answer your question about that, instead of us telling them to do shrubs and fences and all that, I mean, another thing, if you would like to help him encourage to the neighbor to get behind her front yard, is we do have the availability to ask him to move that house to the north. We can go as close to 7 feet, is that correct, to the north property line? If that would help with the privacy for her front porch, as an additional option instead of requiring a shrub or a bush or whatever. I'm not even sure in a dimensional variance if we're allowed to do that. Paul can help you with that. So, did you have an time going on?
This is right here, 646, Randy.
Well, then I'm on the wrong street. West Grand. Yeah, that's the one right there. Yeah, right there on the south, whatever, down the lower right. Yeah. No, that's not it. Then I was on, let's see. Clinton and West Grand, is that where we're at? So this one right here is the same thing. So see how we pulled that back so it was a little bit. And I think we were down to 5 or 7 foot on the side yard on that one. So I guess that's kind of my thought was that instead of, if the applicant be willing to maybe move that house to the north, a lot of her problem goes away and it gets a little bit for her front porch and stuff. So, just an idea. I know that was difficult too because they wanted to put it back on the back. I think they ended up with something on the grass. But anyway. Just my thoughts on that.
Your context.
So with that being, was that a motion, Jeff? That you made?
I made a motion to approve the variance.
Can I second that?
Can I ask you a quick question, Randy?
Yes, sir.
On that house that you were just pointing out, did that have a garage on it also?
Yes.
Okay.
2 stall garage, similar to yours, probably only 20 feet wide to 22 feet deep. I see yours is 22 feet wide, which is the perfect width for a 2 stall garage, and a really good depth for a vehicle because now you can get some storage and.
Correct. Okay.
4 deep is a minimum, and I'm sure those are exterior dimensions.
Okay. And I have no problems pushing it part of the north. I was only, when I originally did this layout for these setbacks, I was trying to keep the neighborhood into context with all of the way that it looked on the road.
If I could just, I appreciate Randy's comments and the experience on this lot. A couple of thoughts. The first condition here, there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to property. I don't think there are any exceptional circumstances compared to the neighbors, personally. I don't think that standard is passed, personally. In the one other example I have, when we last met, we had a gentleman who wanted to put a shed in the side yard because his backyard was uninhabitable, basically. That to me was exceptional and extraordinary. And all the reasons seem to be there for an easy approval. Here, I don't personally see that, and I also see that as the ZBA, we're supposed to be enforcing our zoning codes, not varying them willy-nilly, so I have that standard in the back of my head. Having said that, if there's a way for both of these folks to kind of get to yes, because the gentleman certainly has a right to use his property, if he gets it, if there's a way for them to get to yes, I'd be very pleased to do that, because it would be potentially valuable to the neighborhood. If there's a way to get there. I don't know how to move what where to get to yes there, but our conditions, whatever it is, the footnote 11 or whatever, allow us to account for the fact that the old zoning doesn't apply to our new zoning. We go 50% less, and it still doesn't mean it. So I think without too much trouble, we can get pretty close to not really requiring much of a variance at all, if we're creative. That's my point.
I think part of the exceptional and whatnot is because you're developing into this old neighborhood that was, like you see, not really up to our standards at the time. And, you know, I think that's where this exceptional is coming from, is you're trying to take new and put it in old, you know, I mean, sometimes developed in the 40s doesn't quite fit into what
What Paul said is typically exceptional and extraordinary. Typically, these are related to peculiarities of lots, such as challenging topography, odd shapes, easements. None of those exist here. That's why I'm saying that.
I think it's just like
It's an odd shape, and I also agree.
At the front, you could say it's an odd shape.
And it's also grandfathered in by the Coles Dole planning of this lot from 1941. That's my argument.
So
Grandfathered in. That's a legal term. That means whatever was in force at that time still stands, and the ordinances cannot change it without some kind of variation. So that's why I'm saying approve the variance.
Okay.
Because it fits with the neighborhood. It was grandfathered in. It was made that way.
That's not what our ordinance says. It doesn't say.
No, I know that. I'm talking about a legal condition.
Our ordinance is a legal condition. It's a law.
It is, unless it gets to circuit court. See what I'm saying?
I see you're saying that you could maybe argue it in court based upon the assertion that the zoning ordinance isn't properly allowing for.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, but I'm saying the way this neighborhood was constructed or platted out back in 1941, if that was the right year, should make a big deal of difference in making this an exception for this lot.
And I think that our ordinance accounts for that by saying that you go 50% less in old zonings, and that standard was applied and we still don't meet it.
Well, that may be correct, but I'm just saying that's one of the considerations I'm using is at least a presupposition that in 1941 this lot was intended to have a house standing on it eventually. Just like the rest of this neighborhood, and it's the last lot in the neighborhood.
I agree with Jeff. I think, you know, in 1941, corner lots were built like this. And if you look at the lots that we were shown earlier in the newer plats, those things are square basically, because over the year and how they did this, that all changed. So that's kind of an extraordinary circumstance on this lot that was developed in 41 based on the current how they built and designed and whoever engineered it back then, that's what they did for those size lots. So I would agree that that's extraordinary enough to have us approve this.
Okay. Where are you at now?
No, I was just gonna ask I guess a question, because Paul, you know, in reference to what Tom was just talking about regarding the extraordinary aspect of it, Paula had brought up a thing when we were talking about the 50% of the current zoning, that there was things in ordinance in there, but she had brought up a slide earlier that showed when it was a corner lot, because of the two different types of potential front yard lots, it reduced the amount of buildable space to just a sliver of a piece of land. So in that particular instance, it does make this as an extraordinary circumstance, because it's not an inside lot, it's a corner lot, which that 50% reduction really slivered it down.
Well, if it wasn't a corner, we wouldn't be sitting there, so.
Probably.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I could make up a case why it's extraordinary. It's just not, the examples Paula gives, topography, easement, none of those apply in this case, in my view. And that's why I say I'm not sure it meets the standard.
Okay.
I mean, personally, what I'd like to do is take the house and move it out, a lot further out, closer to Huffer. Is it Huffer?
Yes.
And move it away from Ms. Ulmer's house. I'd rather approve that, personally.
Maybe 25 feet.
Yeah, and so there's a more offer. Anyway.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say the numbers that are in the sample motion that are on the slide here, those are the numbers that are based on the requirements of the ordinance with the reductions and the house as proposed by the applicant. If the applicant is amenable, the ZBA could approve different numbers. If you wish to pull the house based on the comments from the neighbor, the discussion into that, like I said, in when I did the analysis based on that footnote that lets you look at the neighboring homes along Hufford, they're set at on average 19 feet from the property line. But I don't have the authority to, like, this is what the ordinance says. The zoning, the board theoretically could grant, the intent is to grant the lowest variance to give relief. But if that relief needs to be different than that, the board has the authority.
For example, we could approve no variance to the rear instead of 10 feet, and instead approve a 14-yard variance to the front. Just as an example, right? And we're still approving a variance.
Yes.
We're just accommodating the neighbor's concerns as we can.
Yes.
So, Tom, and what is Tommy? So, on that one on Clinton and West Rand, can you throw the dimensions on there, on that map? Can you throw the lot lines on there?
Yes, I can, if you bear with me.
So back to Tom's comment, if I may, you know, I think there's some validity to that 25-foot front yard setback. It's, where are we at anyway? And for right now, are we at 30? 27? So I mean, we could move it a couple feet. I don't have a problem with asking them to do 25 feet. But I still think, I wouldn't mind if even if we went 10 feet north side yard set, or back there then? No, side yard set line on the north side and get that house out behind her front porch. Just a conversation. Because I know a lot of those in Chesterfield Heights are 25-foot front yard. But also they have wider streets there, so. Right away thing. Getting close, kid? There they are. There's a non-dimension thing.
It's approximate because this is an aerial image and the lot lines are approximate. And the angle there, it's roughly 8 feet, 7 or 8 feet.
But I think, are you over here on 026? Can you go to 627 Clinton?
6.
That's the one there, you know, that's that one right there.
This one here?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
This one.
So that's the one that I was referring to, a similar situation that we have here. So,
Okay.
with that backyard and the side yard and that. So see how we pull that to line up with
Here.
with 031. And then I was wondering if, for Tom, could you find out what that front yard setback is possible? Pretty close, please?
Here?
Yes.
It also looks like you have a 2-stall garage on that also. Okay.
So, Tom was great. I think that front yard setback would help get away from the neighbor to the east. And if the applicant be willing to do that, we could get a couple feet. And then if we could push that, if we can figure out where to get his side and that front to line up behind her, or to the front of the whole. I think everybody wins here. Well, we'll let the man motion.
You're all set, Okay, so what's your thoughts, Randy?
All right, so my thoughts are, why don't we go with it? So I'm gonna ask the applicant if he'd be willing to go with a 25-foot front yard setback. And if everybody agrees with it, 10-foot side yard setback to the north, is that correct? Or 7, I don't care, but I mean, I don't know what, I think what's her name?
Heather.
Heather, I think you said you're 7 feet in front, you was too far 7 feet in front of your house or something, your porch. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not sure how far.
I just keep round numbers, I thought 10 feet.
I just know, like, I see like where it's all surveyed, so that's kind of how I know where the house is gonna be.
Yeah, I had it all staked out with what I have on here. I actually had it staked out, and so that's why she's able to have a good visual as to where it was actually going to be sitting on the property.
Would that work to get it back?
To slide that, so we're looking to slide the entire structure north.
Right.
So to reduce that, now how much can I reduce that down to?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
I'm guessing it's probably going to be about 10 feet. Between 7 and 10 feet to move that, so I'd have about a 5, I would need to take that north lot line probably down to close to 5 feet.
About 7, that would work.
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking that'd be pretty close. I'd have to get out there, I'd have to get my tape measure out to find out the exact measurements, but I've got no problems moving it to the north.
Okay, so if we went 7 feet from the north property line, 25 feet from the front property line, that should appease your neighbor, make her a little bit more comfortable with what's going on there. Is that okay?
When you say the front yard, we're talking about the west side along Hufford, okay? The measurements that we see on the print that I had presented, the survey line, the surveyed property line is approximately 15 feet east of the Hufford, edge of the Hufford Road. And then there's 15 feet from that surveyed property line to the front edge of the house.
That's okay, we gotta go from the property line.
Okay, so it's only 15 feet then, right now, this is what I've got at. If we're going property line, staked property line, surveyed property line, it's 15 feet. But there's 30 feet between the road and, because of the right of way that runs through there.
He's already asking for 15 foot. Did I understand that or what?
No, so
I didn't do my best to help. So that, this might be the confusion here. So these are the numbers that are based on the minimum reductions from the ordinance before applying for a variance and the house as submitted with the application. So the secondary front yard is the one facing Hufford.
Okay.
The ordinance requires, with the reduction from the footnotes, 26.5 feet from the property line into the property. The house that he proposed is set at 15 feet from the property line, which is a difference. The variance being requested is 11.5 feet.
So then if he puts a sidewalk in there, it's gonna be, the back edge of the sidewalk gonna be 16 feet from the home, theoretically.
Yes.
So how does that make us feel now?
I still think that the variance as constructed and explained still fits within what he can do with his house, and I'm hoping that the board will approve it, because we're right at the limits because of this weird lot size and shape, which makes it extraordinary and exceptional in the neighborhood. A lot more than a lot of the properties in this neighborhood are not corner lots set on a diagonal. That's my point.
Yeah, Paula, these numbers are different than what you had in the briefing packet, so that's why I wanted to.
Yes, I apologize, the side street yard one
It was
is
4
different.
feet in your briefing. And it's a little-
Yeah, I tried to mention that, so that's because 19 feet is the average that you find with the footnote, but then there's a cap on that at a reduction to 75% of what's allowed. I can, if you bear with me as I scroll here, no new residential building, this is just before the ZBA looks at it. So the ZBA can grant more than this, but this is what's permitted with just administratively. No new residential building shall have a front yard less than 75% of the front yard required. 19 feet is less than 75%. So the 75% is the 26 and a half feet that was shown in the slide earlier. So my apologies for that confusion. The paper I passed around corrects that error.
Yeah, I think that's a little more, a little more privacy out from Hillside. Is it?
So, Paul, is it my understanding that the side yard is still without variances, 7 feet for the minimum, based on the criteria of the footnotes and all that?
Yes, it's 7 feet. As shown, again, I apologize for the scrolling here, it's 10 feet. So
But the side yard on Comfort, if it shows 15 feet, can we ask that then to put that at 7?
I believe so. The building official will have to approve that, so there's requirements there that I'm not very well versed in, dependent on the height of the eaves, I believe, is how far it has to be.
Yeah, that's fine. So, so that's the side yard, right? So we can ask that, going to be at minimum of 7 feet there.
Apologies, I'm gonna scroll really far fast. So here, that is the rear yard. I understand the house is oriented differently. The ordinance requires the front yard is on
But if the
Hillside.
if the front of the house is on Comfort, the rear yard should be behind it, correct?
Next address is Hillsdale.
Well, there's probably 2 addresses on there.
It's Hillside.
You can go to Hillside. You go to Hillside.
Exactly. Hillsdale College.
I mean, I'm just asking a common question. If the front of my house is here, that's the front yard, and the behind the house is the rear yard. And then this on the right would be my side yard, and then the one on the left would be my side yard, correct?
Because the corner lots have 2 front yards, you can swap them theoretically depending.
Okay, so we swapped it from Hillside to Huffer, right? Our front yard is gonna swap now, correct? From Hillside to Huffer, we have to pick one, don't we?
They're both front yards according to the ordinance. So it's what you determine is the rear yard and what is the side yard is what I understand you to be asking. And those, yes, I believe you could reorient that, and then it changes which one gets a large variance and which one might require a small variance. If you do what you're suggesting, Randy, then what you're determining to be the side yard, which is the north property line, and then reduce that to 7 feet, now you need to grant a different variance for what you are now proposing to be the rear yard, which is now abutting Miss Heather's property.
Correct.
Yes, but that would require variance because the rear yard requirement is 25 feet and it's set at 10 feet, so that would still require a variance.
So it is complicated.
I don't think we need to redesign the house, and he's already staked it out, so kind of know where the dimensions are, and if he's willing to work with the permitting department to adjust for patio, deck, and maybe moving the house forward a few feet, I think he's probably should have this approved.
Moving it to the north a few feet.
Yes,
So that,
yeah.
okay,
As Randy was saying.
yep, okay, yep.
So how far can we ask him to move it to the north without doing another, add to the variance? 0 feet or?
I'm not the building official. The board has jurisdiction here. I believe as a primary structure, I don't believe it can be closer than 10 feet under the current building code. You probably know better than I, but that would be the hard line, what the building code says.
I guess then the question in my mind is would 5 foot extra back that house up, help the neighbor, you know? With her concerns on her front line up, so.
I would just prefer if it was like lined up, like my house, not set back or, right now it's like a lot, what is it, 4 to 7 feet ahead of mine? So it's just like,
So
It doesn't really
5 feet would help.
Huh?
5 feet would help if it was pushed
yeah, but it
back
was
to the
just like
north.
back. Because living structures, I think, have to be 15 feet away, but I think their garage, they're not gonna live in it, so I think from the neighbor in the back, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal.
I'd really like to see the 7 feet on the north, but I don't know if that's another complication here, but,
Just because there's no room to go anywhere else.
yeah, and I think.
You can't go closer to Hillside Road and you can't go closer to Hufford.
I think everybody would agree with that, but
Sidewalks, right?
12 down to 10?
Yeah.
I'd like 7.
We can.
We can conditionally go with what's permitted, maximum permitted.
10.
Whatever that is. And conditionally approve. Maximum permitted.
So you go 10, you're giving her 5 feet, 10?
I think you got to. So Jeff, what are we gonna do with your motion, please?
I'll accept the modifications of the permitting department and construction code to make it available for him to adjust the dwelling on the way it sits on the lot to fill that particular corner diagonal lot. And that's a condition, I'll amend my motion to approve this variance under that condition, and we'll let them negotiate it.
Well, I think we ought to give them a dimension here today, if I feel more comfortable.
Well, we don't really know. Everybody's saying 7 feet, some people are saying 10. I'm not sure which is appropriate or applies.
10's a minimum.
Minimum.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we can do 70 or 75% of what that is, so that's why I want to 75. But
Okay, that makes sense.
that's what my brain's telling me.
That's acceptable to me.
I believe that 75%, that's a zoning ordinance requirement. The building code is separate and can't be adjusted in the same way zoning can be.
Yeah.
So then, 10 it is.
10 is.
Okay. So I'll second that motion, but I would like to have it restated just where I got it all clear.
If it would help, I'd be happy to summarize what I have heard from the discussion, which is if the building is shifted to the north 5 feet would change, there is no longer a need for a front yard variance. It was requesting 4 feet. If you're moving the building north 5 feet, that one goes away.
Correct.
To reduce not changing the secondary front yard, which is still requesting an 11.5 foot variance along Hufford to 15 feet, and to reduce the rear yard setback or the side yard, on the north property line, by 15 feet, the variance would be 15 feet from 25 to 10. Does that sound accurate to the discussion?
Yes.
If so,
Yes.
a board member would need to amend the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second the amended motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeff, second by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, it's passed. Thank you. Those conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather, may I get your phone number?
Yeah.
Because I would really like to work with you guys next door. I haven't had a chance to stop over and say hi. Okay, but I definitely would like to work with you on that.
Who's this? Yeah, does he sign anything?
Yes, before you leave the director, I need you to sign a few documents for me. And then I'm going to
No,
Because that is
pull up the
a
agenda.
concern
Right.
for us too.
Ron, why don't you
in the
go by my house?
in the development.
Ron, why don't you give her your opinion too? She has a piece of paper. You have a piece of paper ready?
Oh, yeah. I have my phone, so I can start.
Well, it's a very well done discussion, considering all the alternatives.
So, the last thing on the agenda is board members.
Rob.
And I don't know, Paul, we can't discuss that. We gonna do that tonight or next time? No, next time. Okay. Because we got people coming and going, I guess, from the board, so. Paul, is there anything else that you?
Yep.
The
Concern.
The planning commission continues to work through the master plan amendments process that they've been undertaking. And so it'll be a discussion at their next meeting regarding some of the things that were added to the zoning ordinance, putting them also in the master plan. So regarding the RPUD3, the new kind of high density specialized targeted district that would allow greater density in particular areas along the Laker line stops on Lake Michigan Drive and the redevelopment mixed use areas along Alpine, and some the significant undeveloped lots. There's a few updates to maps, things like that, and then at the April 17th, I believe, meeting of the Planning Commission, they'll continue their conversation about the West Standdale redevelopment area. You've all been invited to some of those meetings. I will make sure you get an email from me yet this week with those dates, so you can plan accordingly if you would like to be in attendance at those meetings. Again, they are, it's an invitation to participate if you would like. I believe that that's all I have for you. As again, the zoning board of appeals meets as needed. There are no pending cases on my desk for you yet, and I will let you know as soon as there is one.
Okay. All right, with that, I need a motion to close our meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. By Dan. And by Randy. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting's closed. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job, guys.